You're listening to Jules Schiller
on ABC Radio Adelaide.
What's in a name? A lot when you think about it, because names invariably favour men. Men are called Mr., while adult women traditionally have to indicate their marital status with Miss and Mrs., although that has changed with Ms. Women automatically, traditionally, took their husband's surnames, and so did their children. So if you're a female listener, I'm guessing you've been asked for your maiden name repeatedly throughout your life. It's an odd term, isn't it? Maiden name. I've never understood why it's just not birth name. Anyway, you don't need me to tell you how it works. But what's happening now is that this is changing around the world. It was interesting to see, even in a country like Italy, overnight, their constitutional court has ruled unlawful the practice of automatically giving children their father's surname. And it's a judgment over there that's being hailed as a step forward for women's rights. So basically now in Italy, a child is automatically given both their parents' surnames, and then the parents can agree either to hyphenate them or to choose one. So there is no automatic assumption that a child will get their father's surname. I know several people who have their mother's maiden name. So they're in a family and they have their mother's maiden name and they don't have their dad's maiden name. Now, often this happens for various reasons. The man's surname can be a bit icky. My sister's a good example. Her husband's surname is Spitz. He didn't want his daughters to have the surname Spitz, so they have Schiller as their surname. Maybe you're worried that your mum's maiden name or birth name could die out, so you've decided to take that name as your surname. Or maybe, and I have several friends in this category, you identify more with your mother. Your mother raised you, your father left at a young age, and you feel almost it's a sign of loyalty to take your mother's surname instead of your father's. There's always an interesting story around taking your mother's surname as your surname, I think, because up to this point it hasn't really been the tradition and probably still isn't the tradition. I thought it was interesting first, while we wait for your calls on 1300 222 891, to talk to someone who works in family law about what the situation is in Australia, because it is changing around the world. Eva Bailey is a partner in family law at Mellor Olsen Lawyers. She joins us now. Hi, Eva.
Hi, Jules. Thanks for having me on the show again.
It's great to chat to you again, Eva. Interesting decision in Italy, which obviously is a Catholic country, traditional country, that you don't automatically get your father's surname. Now it's a decision that both parents have to make. What's the law in Australia?
Look, the law here is already very similar to that. At the end of the day, each jurisdiction's slightly different because it is decided state by state under the Births, Deaths and Marriages Registration Act. But ultimately, it is encouraged and required for parents to agree on it if they can. If they can't agree on the child's name, surname and given name, then the Registrar of Births in each state will determine it, and or it can lead to some court action if that's necessary.
What would you say is the percentage of children taking their father's surname compared to their mother's, Eva?
Look, I think it is still overly popular. It's quite popular and common that children will take the father's surname. That has been a tradition that does continue, but I think it is becoming increasingly different to that. I think more and more children are taking on mum's name in some cases, or quite often it's a hyphenated name that people are using, and that's something that parents can agree to do.
Have you heard of circumstances where a child has their father's name? And I have a friend like this because his dad walked out on the family when he was quite young. So then you go back and will change your name to your mum's original name, Eva?
Yes, absolutely, Jules. I've helped people with some of those situations where it's appropriate. Under the legislation, you can apply to SACAT, our South Australian Civil and Administrative Tribunal here, for a change of name. Obviously, both parents need to be involved in that process, or at least aware of it, or some effort made to serve the father if that's the case. If it can be the other way around, of course, otherwise. But both parents need to be involved, and the court will make a decision based on the children's best interest or the child's best interest.
You're listening to Eva Bailey. She is a partner in family law at Mello Olson Lawyers. We're talking about a decision in Italy, and it's something that is also it's pretty much the situation in Australia as well, where you no longer automatically have your father's surname. It's a decision that both parents have to make. Eva, I mean, the hyphenated name phenomenon always comes up. In some ways, it's the most equitable, but it does irritate a lot of people. Are you seeing that happening more?
I am seeing it happening more, but I guess it's not as common as you might think. It's not an automatic choice for people. I find that a lot of people are concerned about giving their child such a long name or complicated name. What happens to the next generation then, etc. So it's certainly one that a lot of people choose to use, but it's not as common as you might think. That's my experience.
Thank you, Eva, for explaining the situation. Let's go to the phones on this. You've been listening to Eva Bailey. I'm Jules Schiller. It's ABC Radio Adelaide. We're asking you an interesting question. Have you got your mum's maiden or birth name instead of automatically taking your dad's, which has been the case in the tradition for many, many years? Let's go to Noarlunga. Anne joins us now. G'day, Anne.
Hello. When I got married, I took my husband's surname, and then when we had a child, he was born with his surname. But at 10 days old, my husband left and never came back, never saw him again, never contributed at all. So I went to court when he was about 4, before he started school for my son, and got his surname changed to my birth surname because I'd already changed my name back. And he's now married with children, and they've all got what you'd call maiden name. Because I think, well, if he's going to have, at 10 days old, he's had no contact and never contributed, why should he carry on that family line? And, that family name. Did
your son's father just walk out at 10 days, never paid maintenance, never had any more connection?
No, that's correct, yeah.
That's awful.
That's an awful thing to do to a child. So I just think, well, why should he carry on that, like his father's last name? And as an adult, he had the choice of, and I explained the reason why, and he's happy to have my father's surname, my birth surname. I don't like calling it maiden name. It makes you sound like an old maid.
Well, do you like the term maiden name? It does sound kind of 18th century almost, doesn't it, maiden name?
It's like you're an old maid on the shelf.
Thank you, Anne. And that is very similar to a friend of mine whose dad did something, not 10 days. That's extraordinary. It was more like 2 or 3 years. Changed his name back, and he was a teenager when it happened. He went back and changed it in a sign of solidarity with his mother. Chris has called from Springton. We're talking about, do you have your mum's birth name instead of your dad's? And often there's a reason behind this. Hi, Chris.
G'day, Jules. How you going?
Good. Have you done this?
Yeah, I have. My father was never around when I was a kid. And just before my grandmother passed away, I decided to change my name back to my mum's maiden name, which is her side of the family. So I was 25 when I did that. 25, Chris? So everyone knew you as something different. And what prompted you after all those years to do it? I felt a lot more connected to that side of the family, and I just, before she passed away, I decided to do that. So. And did it have an effect? Did your grandmother appreciate it, Chris? Yeah, she did, absolutely. And it's something my mother should have done when I was a kid, I think, but it was good that I finally got around to it. And how does it feel having the new name? You would have had to have changed everything bureaucratically, but how did your friends react to your new surname, Chris? Yeah, they found it very strange. Once you explain it, people understand, but I've got a pretty wide group of people that I associate with, and they found it quite weird, and sometimes I still get called by my old last name, so it's... Well, good on you, Chris. I think having a last name is... You would want to feel that the last name that you have, the parent was kind of stuck around. Thank you, Chris. Let's go to Onkaparinga Hills. Jim has called up on the topic of, have you got your mum's birth name instead of your dad's? Hi, Jim.
Yeah, g'day, Jules. And just briefly, I've actually got to take my granddaughter back to her mother shortly. Her mother has had an IVF child, and, the donor is far away. And so my granddaughter has her mother's name, which, of course, is my name. So, that's the way life is these days.
So just take it through. Your granddaughter has your mother's name. So you have your mother's name as well?
No. My granddaughter has my family name. My daughter has my family name.
Oh, okay.
And she's not married, but she has a lovely 16-month-old daughter, my granddaughter, and she has my family name.
Oh well, congratulations, Jim.
Yes, thank you.
And you've taken care of her right now.
Yes, I'm just taking her home now. We sort of look after her a couple of days a week while my daughter works from home.
Oh, good on you. What a great granddad you are, Jim. Thank you. Let's go to Pranesh. Is it Pranesh or Pranesh from Kings Park?
Pranesh. Your first one's correct, Jules. How are you?
Good, Pranesh. So have you got your mum's surname?
Yes, I do. Yeah. Initially, when my dad pretty much left us when I was 10 months old, so it's pretty much my mum's brought me up as a single mum all these years. And around about the time we moved to Adelaide or Australia, I actually ended up taking my okay. Firstly, traditionally in India, we take our father's first name as our surname as children. That's the way it travels down the family in our case. So eventually, after moving here and learning about how the family name works here, I actually chose to take my mum's maiden name as my maiden name, as my surname, basically. And yeah, that's how I'm known today.
And Pranesh, how did people, in the Indian community, did they find that odd that you've taken your mum's, last name instead of your dad's first name?
I don't think many people realise that in the first place, because my mum's surname is basically her dad's first name. That is my grandfather's first name. So it just sounds like a male's name as my surname. So as far as the Indian community is concerned, I don't think they would notice. And as a family, I take my mum's surname, so we belong to the same family. So, yeah.
Pranesh, does it just make you feel better to have that to have your mum's name as part of your name after what happened with your dad?
Oh, absolutely, without a question, yeah.
Thank you, Pranesh. Let's go to Diana from Prospect. Many of you have got your mum's last name as your own name. Hi, Diana. What's your situation?
Hi, Jules. How are you going?
Good.
I have an unusual surname, which I kept after my amicable separation happened. And so I went back to just being my maiden name, as you talked about it. And my boys had their father's name, which was a bit like being, it's not Smith, but it was a bit like being Smith.
Yeah.
And they, at a very young age, actually said, we would like to hyphenate our name. And I went, okay, that's interesting. I don't think you're old enough to make that decision. But their school allowed them to trial it for a year.
Wow, okay. I've never heard of that, Diana. Yeah.
Yeah, without actually going through DPOL, which we did eventually, and I think it cost me $400 for each of them. And I said, just because my last name starts with B and your surname starts with W, it doesn't mean that you're just going to jump up the alphabet, for sports day and things like that.
and so they trialled it out. And
the school was willing to let them be a hyphenated name.
And is the trial finished, Diana, or is it still going?
They're now 21 and 22.
Right, okay.
It finished a long time ago.
So what happened? Did they stick with a hyphenated name?
They kept it, and I paid for it. But the school was kind enough. It was a Lutheran school in the northern suburbs, who was happy enough to let them trial it and see whether they were comfortable with that.
Oh, that's great, Diana. What a great story. And, it must make you feel good to know that your name is part of their name now, moving forward.
Well, exactly. And, I certainly didn't keep their father's name, and I didn't for work-wise anyway. But the fact that they wanted to and the school was supportive to let them try, I think was, good on them, because we didn't have to make a sound decision.
Yeah.
When they weren't old enough to necessarily know that's exactly what they wanted.
Yeah, because we had Chris before who waited till 25, and obviously that takes retraining people to call you something different, and your school allow you to try it out. Thank you, Diana. 1300 222 891 if you've just tuned in. We're talking about the increasing trend around the world, and it's happened already in Australia, but it happened in Italy, which is a big deal. You don't automatically get your father's last name now when you have a baby in Italy. They've said both parents automatically get their name hyphenated unless parents can agree otherwise. Let's go to Emma. Emma, have you got your mum's surname or have you got another situation?
Yeah, no, I've got my dad's surname. I'm just wondering if I can add it to my kid's name now after I've got 4 kids and they all took my partner's name. I'm just wondering if there's any cost involved to add my, not even as a hyphenated name, but maybe as a middle name.
Oh, so to add your birth name as their middle name, is there a cost?
Well, yes.
I'd like to, do we still have Eva Bailey? Yeah, we do. Eva's been listening to all these stories. That's great. Eva, can you answer Emma's question?
Yes, sure. Look, Emma, if you and the father of the children agree, then you can apply through births, deaths and marriages, and they would have an application fee. But other than that, it wouldn't be particularly expensive for you to do that. If both parties agree, that shouldn't be difficult to do. They will want to know what the children want. They will want the children's consent to it, if the children are old enough to give consent, or if they're too young to understand, and then their consent wouldn't be required. Is it the case that the other parent would agree to that change?
Emma, what does the other parent agree and your children old enough?
I haven't asked him, but we're still together. I don't think it would be a problem.
Well, hopefully he'd agree to it, Emma.
Yeah, hopefully. And the children are this young and yelling in the background. So.
I could hear them, Emma. And why would you like them to have your name as a middle name? Just so it lives on?
Yeah, and I only have one brother, and he's got 2 kids and only one boy, and they all took the same surname, and I don't know, I feel a bit left out.
Good on you, Emma. I mean, I think times have changed and it's important to change along with them. Thank you to all those calls, really interesting calls, and thank you to Eva Bailey, who's a partner in family law at Mellor Olsen Lawyers. 27 minutes past 4. You're listening to Jules Schiller, ABC Radio Adelaide. Drinking crimes coming up shortly. Sarsaparilla. Be fascinated if we get anyone to support this soft drink. Much maligned. Rightly so, in my opinion.